Happy Pride Month. So on my community tab on my YouTube channel, which surprisingly gets a lot of interactions with you guys, which thank you, because my Twitter is dead. And so if I post this sort of thing on Twitter, nobody really responds. But I asked you guys, hey, are you interested in me explaining my experience and my journey being transgender / non-binary, and to also answer any questions you may have, because it's not an often comfortably talked about subject matter, and it's Pride Month, and I figured it'd be appropriate. I usually don't like shoving it in people's faces because I know like it shouldn't be a big deal, but I felt that this was the most appropriate time to do this, and I know that there's some of you who have actual questions because you're just unsure, and given the questions I've seen, there's some of you where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know exactly what your problem is, and there's other ones of you who I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're in the exact wrong direction. And I want to help those people in particular with what's going on. First question, please explain to me what trans non-binary is. The bar for being transgender is way lower than people really think. The definition of transgender is just, it's an umbrella term for someone who doesn't identify with the behavior or conform with the sex that's given to them at birth. And that doesn't mean you actually have to transition, but most people typically do. Non-binary is a term that falls underneath transgender. It just gets more specific. Really, it just means it's someone who doesn't identify with one gender. For me, I'm gender fluid. So some days I wake up and I'm feeling feminine. Other days I wake up and I'm feeling masculine. Some days I wake up and I'm feeling neither. Honestly, today I'm feeling tired. I like aspects of both genders. There are people who like neither gender. There's people who want to go about figuring out their own gender expression and want to carve their own path that isn't necessarily seen as boy or girl. And if you can figure out how to do that, please tell me, because that sounds really cool, but it is something that completely eludes me. For me, I use both terms for the sake of simplicity. Largely for people who don't know what it means, I will stick with one or the other, depending on the conversation. In public, if I'm talking to people, I will tell them I'm non-binary just because they don't need to know the medication I'm taking or the conversations I've had with doctors. Non-binary is very much more palatable for everyday conversation. However, I also stick with the term transgender because a lot of the experiences that people who are transgender, I also share, that being gender dysphoria. But I don't share all of the experiences of being transgender or with gender dysphoria. I've talked to people who legitimately have those problems, and a lot of the time they'll be like, gosh, I hate how my hair is going away. And I'm like, absolutely, yeah, I hate that too. That's probably just a regular concern though. It's like, oh, well, I also hate how my hips aren't wide. I'm like, oh yeah, I actually also am upset about that too. And I also hate how my waist isn't curvy. And I'm like, actually, yeah, I feel that too. And then they go, I also don't like how tall I am. And I just sit there and actually, I don't have a problem with that, so sorry, can't relate. And they like, I also hate, what I was born with, wink, wink. And I'm like, actually, I'm pretty okay with that too. So, And I will go further into that topic, but the point is, because I am currently on the same road as a lot of people who are transgender while also identifying as non-binary, I felt it's just more appropriate to say trans non-binary. Have you experienced this? Feeling like time or age changes your relationship with gender? Yes, but only because I'm more comfortable with my body and I now have the confidence to express myself how I want to. I feel like I'm getting to a point where I'm at the end of the road with my journey of self-discovery with this aspect of my life in particular. I had a journey where I thought I was asexual, and then I realized I just hated myself and didn't feel like I deserved a relationship, and that's how I rationalized it. Then I came out and tried out hormones, and ever since then, everything has just felt right. It feels like what I'm doing now is everything I had been wishing I was doing my whole life. How are you? Are you happy at the moment? Well, other than not being able to afford a house inside the state I live in, yeah, especially since the quarrels I've had with my dad have largely been resolved, and I have a really great partner at the moment, so all things considered, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. How do you deal with transphobia and mean people? Well, I haven't actually experienced any transphobia in public, because as we all know, transphobes are bitches and cowards. But when it comes to people online, when I see it there, I mean, I've already been hate rated once, so there's not a lot I haven't already seen. And at this point, if they do say something that actually like gets on my nerves, that's more of a signal to me that I'm still insecure about something about myself and I need to work on it. I don't like, you learn to just not talk to them. It's just the worst case scenario is interacting with them. I may be a straight man, but every time I see you, I have to admit that I envy your style, especially your androgynous facial features paired with your makeup skills and painted fingernails, etc. First of all, thank you. But I get that comment a lot, actually. And a big aspect of how I present myself is just to be hot. It doesn't necessarily matter if I'm a hot girl or a hot guy. I just want to be attractive. Like, I do get stared at sometimes by both guys and girls in public, depending on how much effort I put into myself. I have been catcalled also, which is actually a funny story because there was one guy who catcalled me in a really cute way, because he came up to me and he looked like he could be homeless. I was in Denver, or he looked like he could have just been dressed as like he was really cold. I don't know. But he was passing me as I was dressed very high femme, and he goes, "Excuse me, can you spare a smile?" A lot of it is putting effort into creating my own sense of style, not so much anything else. How do you mention it to your friends/loved ones? I would like to change my name, but I'm too shy to tell people. When it comes to changing your name, I struggle with that too. The only people who really know that I don't want to go by my legal name is my partner, my sister, and maybe a couple friends. I'm kind of tired of having an awkward conversation with my parents about this, so I just avoid it entirely with them, given that I'm pretty sure they just wouldn't understand and they would more prefer to just argue with me about how I'm wrong or how they just don't agree with it, and I'm tired of wasting energy on people like that. When I came out, I was very vague with how I did it. I'm pretty sure that my parents, at that time, were not all that accepting of the whole idea, and so I specifically told them, hey, I'm at a point where I don't feel comfortable with my body. You've known this. I'm going to talk to a doctor, start pursuing some changes, figuring out why I'm like this. I'm not going to change my name. I'm not going to change my pronouns. I'm going to stay the same person I am, but I thought I should let you know. What I didn't mention was that I was eventually planning on changing my name, and I wasn't going to change my pronouns immediately because I wanted to like start transitioning first before I made all those uncomfortable changes that would be more imposing on them. How did you know? That's a funny thing. I always sorta knew. It was just obvious when I bring up insecurities to other people and they just can't relate. How I hated my Adam's apple with a burning passion, I still do. Or how I was just outrageously self-conscious about changing clothes in the boys' locker room and how everything about that experience just felt wrong. How a lot of normal experiences for boys were just the most uncomfortable experiences I've had. And it was obvious that boys didn't fantasize about being reincarnated in a magical world where you're the opposite sex of what you are now. What I was in denial. I didn't want to admit it to myself because I was scared. How do you feel in relationships that are non-platonic? Does anything there affect your dysphoria ever in any way? Also, what is your sexual orientation? There are a few things, but they're never big enough that it creates a problem. With my transitioning, the majority of that dysphoria is largely gone, and if there is, it's not as strong as it used to be. And my partner just understands what's going on with me. She knows about, people who are trans non-binary and is accommodating to my needs really well. If you're specifically talking about the down there part of my body, you know what I mean? I've never had a problem with that. I've heard experiences from other people who have dated people who are transgender who have dysphoria down there, and it's a big problem. That's largely a problem that I don't have to deal with, so I can't really tell you what that's like. And I know this comparison may make some people uncomfortable, but if I'm gonna be honest, I find Baphomet, that creepy satanic creature, for everything besides the goat head part, that's like a goal for me. I want to be a solid half male, half female, the perfect blend of both, just in one body. That sounds really good to me. And seeing as I'm gender fluid, you'll know that some days I'm feeling masculine, some days I'm feeling feminine, and that does affect it in some ways, but a lot of the time, either I just deal with it, or we both agree that we'll just both commit time to figuring it out because we don't know a solution right now. A big aspect is that I can't expect my partner to just be accommodating with everything, because that's way too much work to put on them. At a certain point, you have to realize that, do you value what it is you're experiencing, or do you value the relationship you're in more? And are you willing to accommodate you being uncomfortable for them? And I try to do that as much as possible, even though it's, weird for me sometimes. As for my sexual orientation, that is a good question. Largely, I like women. I'd say 95% of what I'm attracted to is women. But then there's Andy Black, and then also there's femboys. And so maybe I'm bisexual? I could also argue that maybe I just am attracted to femininity in general, which there isn't a word for that. I haven't actually had a chance to explore my sexuality, so I really can't tell you with confidence. Did coming out influence your personal style? I noticed you started dressing differently a while ago. You look so radiant, by the way, and happy Pride. Absolutely. But only because I'm more confident to wear what I've always wanted to wear. I feel like now I have attained the body that is complementing to the clothes I want to wear. There's still plenty of clothes I want to wear super duper bad, but I can't, largely because it's like I look at it and go, oh, my shoulders are too wide, that won't look good on me, and I know that. Or my hips aren't big enough, and that also will not look good on me, and I kind of just have to accept that because I can only change so much of myself, so. But I have a lot more options when it comes to style than I used to, so that's really nice. Has makeup ever made you feel dysphoric? I've noticed that you wear makeup in your videos, so I was just curious. Actually, yes. My partner did drag makeup on me, and we both thought that would, that I'd like it. I hate it. And I hate it so much. The makeup I wear for my videos is what I'm comfortable with. I just need to work on doing winged eyeliner with hooded eyes because it's hard and I'm bad at it. What's your favorite look to do as a non-binary person? The look I do for my videos is usually my favorite. Not this video. I'm not feeling either masculine or feminine today. But when it comes to clothes, I now like wearing clothes that are much tighter because now I'm at a point where I want to show off my body, and tighter clothes is just better for that. I'm realizing now I think I'm attractive, which is like something I've never been able to admit before. I no longer need the Dysphoria hoodie. I have this constant feeling of gender ick looking at my body, but I can't pinpoint where dysphoria could be coming from, so I don't know if HRT would help. I don't hate my body or where it is now, but I feel like something just isn't right. How did you figure out what specific physical parts were uncomfortable and need to change? Did you ever pinpoint what specific physical things made you feel dysphoric? Absolutely, it was very easy. But with your situation specifically, I'd recommend several things. The first is, go through every possible aspect of not needing to transition, exercise more, see if that works. If that doesn't, change your style. I'm assuming you've already done that because it's the obvious stuff and everyone's already done that. Ironically, given what you've described, I'd actually say HRT is hormone replacement therapy. I'd actually recommend that's probably what you want because it does change all of you. And there is a big thing in the transgender community where there are people who don't hate the gender they are. They would just be happier as the opposite gender. Your situation, I think you actually need to talk to a therapist about that. I haven't actually met anyone or talked to anyone that has that problem specifically. How long does one need to be on HRT? Does one stop at some point? That is entirely up to the person. For me, if I want the effects of estrogen, I have to keep taking estrogen. If I want the effects of my testosterone blockers, and if I want to stop taking testosterone blockers, I would need to surgically remove my testes. And a lot of people are not comfortable with taking off parts of their body. So a lot of them will opt to just stay on the pills and the medication because that's scary. But what you need to remember is that the effects of HRT, the physical effects, the physical changes in your body are permanent. So if there's ever a point where you hit an area of your body where you're comfortable with it, you can just stop and you can like say, hey, I want to pause my meds just to see if I'm at a point where I can just keep going without them, and you can just tell your doctor. and you just try it out. When originally coming out to friends and family, or at least trying to, did any of them simply not believe you were trans? If so, did they eventually accept it as fact? I spent a lot of time avoiding the word transgender. All I really said was that I'm going to start hormones, and it's really sad how transgender is considered a bad word. I spent a lot of time thinking about how I'd approach coming out to them to make them feel as comfortable as possible. Does seeing your older self in past videos or just in the past make you uncomfortable? All the time. I look at pictures of me and my partner back when we started dating a year ago, and I'm like, how did you date this person? They're disgusting. I look so different now. This is not me anymore. It's shocking how I did not realize how I'd changed so much. But it's in that weird in-between zone where I'm like, I'm uncomfortable with it because I think that's really like the bad rep that where people who are transgender get a bad rep from, because the in-between stages are just awkward for everyone and people just have this odd reaction to it. And obviously the point of transitioning is not to pass, but life is a lot more convenient if you do, and that's a sad truth we have to live with. How to best be there for someone who's transitioning? Talk about it? Don't talk about it. It probably depends on the person, but I want them to know I'm there for them. So ask them what they're comfortable with. Just ask them directly, hey, can I ask you these questions? Are you open to an interview? And they obviously have the option to say, I'd rather not answer that question. I plead the fifth. Obviously, yes, it's going to depend on the person, because I have had friends who have been kicked out of their home for being transgender. And so touching on that subject and asking them questions is horrifying for them, because last time they tried being open about it, they got stabbed in the back. What I would do is, if you're not sure and you're afraid to just ask directly, which obviously you should just ask directly, just ask them if they are comfortable answering questions. I'd ask one question, one that's pretty easy for them to answer, and then maybe wait a while before asking another one. Just poke once, take a step back, and in a week or two, come back, poke again. And if they start getting upset, well, back off. How did you and your partner meet? Tinder. Frankly, Tinder was great for me because I knew if I was going to date someone, that they needed to know about my situation from the get-go. In my bio, I said I am on HRT, I am non-binary, and I am assigned male at birth. That way they know my gender is weird, I am transitioning, and they need to be okay with that, and you know what you'll be getting in bed, for lack of a better term saying that. Because there's some people who kind of just want to see you for one night, and I had to just kind of accept that I probably should put that information out there. Tinder was like the only place I was comfortable looking to date people, because I was not at a point where I was comfortable just telling people this. Now I am. Now I could probably go up to a person, start a conversation, probably just like drop it like, hey, by the way, you should know this. If this makes you uncomfortable, it ain't gonna work. But these uncomfortable aspects are something that you really need to just tell them. You don't want them to find out. It's gonna make it a lot worse if they stumble upon it. Were there any moments in your childhood that, looking back, were signs of you being non-binary? There are so many. I mentioned the heavy hitters previously, but sometimes the more I think about it, the more it's just so dang obvious. What was the process like for getting HRT? I've been wanting to get it, but also it just feels like a big mystery to me. Yes, it did to me too, and I will tell you exactly what you need. You need to find a hospital with a transgender health program. That is the specific wording you need to Google into Google. You have to talk to a therapist so they can diagnose you with gender dysphoria. They specifically need to diagnose you because doctors cannot do anything without a diagnosis. The biggest hurdle is really going to be a therapist. And there's been plenty of situations where you talk to a therapist and find out you're not actually transgender or non-binary. It happens to people. I see it all the time online where they're like, in communities for the transgender and non-binary communities, and they make a post saying, hey, found out I'm not actually one of you guys. I mean, I like this community, but surprise, I was wrong. Then you talk to an endocrinologist who is a hormone doctor, and then they will ask you what your goals are. Not everybody's goals are the same. For example, I am currently on 100% estrogen and only 50% testosterone in terms of like my hormone makeup right now. So like I still have testosterone in my body. I'm not like at zero, I'm not at 100% female levels. I'm at mostly female and some male. What do you think of neo pronouns? I like and I dislike them. I like how people tried to create pronouns that were truly removed from any gender, but it doesn't flow in our language. It feels like something that's chronically online, which I feel bad saying that, but that's how it feels. We settled on they, them, which isn't perfect, but it flows in our language and works the best. I've had my family complain about they, them pronouns, and bitch about how it's supposed to refer to a group of people and not an individual, which is not entirely correct. But I had to tell them, we tried other things. It didn't work, so this is what we settled on. I love the idea behind neopronouns. I hate the execution. What would pre-realization you think of who you are now, and what is something you wish you could tell pre-realization you? I'd tell them, you're not asexual. You need to just stop hating yourself. Easier said than done. Admit that you want to transition to yourself, not to anyone else. But other than that, I like that I waited to transition. I waited until I was ready. That's the most important part. You shouldn't rush into it. People are scared that when they hit their 20s, it's too late. And that's just not true. I started transitioning when I was 22. And when I talk to conservative friends, I can understand why they say that they feel like kids should wait until they're 18 before doing these sort of things. And that's largely because I have seen that there are kids who are just, they feel like they should do it if it's like now or never, and that's not the case. And we're at a point where it's like, it's so hard for the regular person, the regular parent, to tell if their child is actually transgender, or if it's just, they're just being pushed because like they think they might be, and they have to do it now if they want to get the body they want. So really, we need to like stop that. As a rule of thumb, it's just better to wait until you're 18. You're still young enough. What do you wish people who aren't non-binary knew about being non-binary, and how can I be a better ally as a cisgender person? The big thing that people don't understand is that non-binary is a frame of mind. Non-binary people don't owe you androgyny. If you don't associate with either gender, but you also don't want to put in the effort and time into changing how you present yourself, then you are still non-binary. Gender expression takes work. Don't push people into it if they don't have the time or the resources or the money. I spent so much money on new clothes, I spent time learning how to sew, and I spent a lot of time working out in order to reach where I am now. How do you view gender? As a non-binary person myself, I see it as just no thank you. It feels arbitrary and odd to me. I feel gender's largely made up, or like gender is just the societal pressure we have put upon people of different sexes. And because those pressures have become such a societal norm, we think of it as directly tied to sex, when they are two separate concepts. I think the best explanation is the gender box analogy. There is nothing in any field of science that can explain that boys have to like monster trucks and girls have to like dolls. It's just so normal that is the case that we think it's directly tied to their sex. How do you feel about people who are saying only AFAB, assigned female at birth, people only can be non-binary? As someone who is AFAB non-binary, it's very stupid. I haven't heard of this, and that just sounds sexist. I have heard that AFAB people who are non-binary get more attention because, frankly, they're very attractive, and it's easier for someone born female to present androgynously because it's more socially accepted for girls to wear boy clothes than it is for boys to wear girl clothes. But that, I haven't heard of that. It sounds like those people aren't actual allies. Where do you shop for clothes? At first I started online, largely Shein because it's cheap and I could experiment with clothes. Shein is not a good company, but I didn't have a lot of money and I liked some of the styles they had, so I figured better to try this and feel safe than, because there's not a lot I can do to actually stop large major corporations from controlling our lives. Now I go thrifting. It helped having my partner with me in order to, get me comfortable with going into the women's aisle and to have someone who support me. But I've gone shopping for clothing in the women's section alone, and once I start like finding stuff I like, I quickly forget about my paranoia. Unless it's Target. I don't know what it is about Target, but I'm so uncomfortable there. As a trans person who's exploring their gender myself, I'm curious to know how you found what labels work for you. I feel like I have a good understanding of my gender and myself, but I can't label it. On a scale of pink to blue, I am green. That sounds like you're gender non-conforming. Gender non-conforming are people who just don't follow other people's stereotypes of how they should look based on male or female of what they were assigned at birth. As for finding terms that worked for me, you really need to look it up online, just do general Google searches. I grew up during like the height of Tumblr when they were really starting to like delve deep into creating these terms for the LGBT community. So for me, it was pretty easy. How is this affecting your current partner if you're still with them? And any past partners? Well, for my past partner, I feel like that they liked me being non-binary too much. I feel like they were getting real close to sexualizing me because of it. At the time, it felt like they were just accepting me, but with my current partner, now I know what just accepting someone feels like. What age could you say you truly know who you were as a person? Have you ever felt like something wasn't right when you were growing up? Just about everything growing up felt wrong. But the age I feel I really knew who I was when I was a year into hormone replacement therapy. And I realized, yeah, this is all feeling right for the first time in my life. So really around the age of 23 years old. How long did it take you to come out to your parents and how did you work up the courage? As I mentioned, I was in denial about it for the majority of my life, but there was a point where I couldn't keep being in denial. I tried going to bed with corsets on to try and get the curve of my waist the way I want it to be. I've bought sketchy pills for pseudo-feminization properties to try those, and I didn't, self-medicating like that, which is dangerous. Do not do that. However, there was a point where I was hitting a wall. All of that stuff was not working anymore. There was no more progress in those areas. And so I was getting so frustrated, I thought to myself, I know that some dog owners will like wrap a rubber band around the dog's tail to cut off the blood circulation and the tail will eventually fall off. What if I wrapped that around my testicles and had my testicles fall off so that I can't produce any more testosterone? And then I stopped and went, okay, if I'm really gonna go this far, I should just come out and start hormones like I want to, because this is going too far. What are your thoughts on non-binary representation in media currently? Non-binary representation? What's that? The only non-binary person I can really think of is that one lizard person in She-Ra, and that's really it. Do you prefer wearing male or female clothing? I like wearing both. I like men's bottoms and women's tops, only because I still have the parts that I was born with. It's way too uncomfortable to wear pants that don't accommodate for that. But in general, men's clothing is very generic and boring. Women's clothing has actual style. So if we're talking about in general, women's clothing. How to deal with dysphoria as a teenager and how do you deal with it as an adult? I literally wore a corset underneath my shirt to school. I'd start wearing a sports bra because I was really self-conscious about my body and I just wanted to try and pack it all together and, kind of just squeeze it all into the right shape. Of course, now I have to wear a sports bra. And it's weird, but try wearing underwear of the opposite sex. It's probably not gonna be comfortable, but at least for the very beginning, you'll have this sense of gender euphoria. And so chances are you're not gonna be able to wear it for the entire day. Maybe just wear it in your room or wear it when you go to bed, just to like test out the waters of. It's also a good way to test out to see if you're actually like transgender. Like, maybe, I don't know how to like test it out. That's one way. Just wear it all underneath your dysphoria hoodie. What are your pronouns, please? If you would be so kind as to follow me on my Twitter, that would be greatly appreciated. How does your gender affect how you view your sexuality? That's a good question. It's complicated because I say I like women. And if you subscribe to the idea that sex and gender are the same thing, then I'm straight. Very simple. But if you don't, it's very complicated because I try to be neither male or female, and I try to be both at the same time. So I just kind of stick with the term queer because there's not really a good word for it. Describe your gender with imagery and poetic wording. Imagine a black rose in an old Victorian vase. in the home of an anime gamer girl streamer who likes soft and cute things. That's me. Do you believe that all non-binary people are trans? Why and why not? Don't. Just don't. These terms are for the individual. They are not for categorizing groups of people. It doesn't matter if all non-binary people are technically transgender. What matters is how you view yourself and how comfortable you are with using these terms for yourself. If you don't vibe with it, then don't use it. It's that simple. It's like me possibly being bisexual. However, I'm sure there's plenty of you who will be in the comments saying, given the description that I've given you, I am technically bisexual. However, I don't like the term for myself right now. I haven't proven that to myself, and therefore I'm not using it. Trying to force these words onto other people is selfish. It does not help them. It is only helping you. Is it bad to say I've never realized this? I just heard it mentioned in your videos. People not realizing that I am part of the LGBT is intentional. If straight people don't have to have a coming out video, then neither should I. Honestly, this hasn't been a secret, but I also don't really talk about it because that's not what my channel is about. It's only in videos like this where I feel comfortable talking about it because it's the point of the video. I'm really curious about what your specific HRT regimen is doing for you, and what do you like/dislike about it. In terms of what it's done to me, my skin is softer, my hair on my body isn't as strong or hard anymore. It doesn't grow back as fast. My fat distribution is going where I want it to go now. My face has changed because of the, fat distribution also. Physically, I like what it's been doing all around. I wish it would do more if I'm going to be honest. I was on the brink of balding, but now that I've started transitioning, I don't have to deal with that anymore. Turns out there's actually pills that help you. You don't even need to be on estrogen. There's just pills that help with that if you catch it early enough. I don't know why more people aren't talking about this. And one thing that people who are assigned female at birth, who are transitioning to be a man will tell you is that testosterone makes you unspeakably horny, and not in a good way, and I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. I'm a girl, but I really, really wish I was born a boy instead. I do wonder what would have been different if that was the case, and if anything would even be any different. I keep telling myself that going through everything, our HRT, surgery, etc., would be too difficult and expensive, and so I have to just suck it up and live with it. I've been doing it for 23 years now anyway, and it's no big deal. But I've started to notice that sometimes I'm okay with being a girl, even though it's a tomboyish one. So it's kind of like, I'm a girl and a boy at the same time. Is this anything similar to being or feeling non-binary or gender fluid? I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. There's plenty of people who are transgender that don't suffer from dysphoria. They just feel like they'd prefer to be the opposite sex. Chances are, if you get to a point where you do want to consider HRT, you're gonna have a much harder time being diagnosed by a therapist. But I think you actually fall into that category. Did you have any significant gender euphoria moments that contributed to you realizing your position in relation to gender? Trying on leggings was one, putting on makeup, wearing corsets, realizing when someone would accidentally address me as she, it did not bother me in the slightest. Along with all the previous things that I mentioned. How do you feel about your name? I have always disliked my name. I like the thought that my parents put behind it. I like the story behind it. I just never felt like it was for me. I got to a point where I liked being called negative more than I liked being called my actual name, and that was a big sign that I probably needed to change it. Do you get gender dysphoria, and if so, what's it like? The best example I like to give was with my Adam's apple and with facial hair. Dysphoria is complicated, and the symptoms of dysphoria are different depending on the different aspects of your body. Like when it comes to my Adam's apple, imagine you have a giant tumor on your neck, or a massive pimple, or a vestigial tail. It just feels like it shouldn't be there. Or when it comes to facial hair, if I go a day when I don't shave, I am tired. And I'm so grumpy, and I'm very quick to anger, and I kept wondering, why is this the case? Until I realized it's because I didn't shave. Dysphoria has several different ways that it'll rear its ugly head. Do you want to pursue surgery or going on hormones? I am on hormones, and I have had surgery done. If you're asking about gender reassignment surgery, I don't have any plans for that. I don't think I want that at all, if I'm gonna be frank. The most drastic surgery I've considered is facial feminization surgery, but even then I want to wait a few more years before I decide to commit to that, and the longer I wait, the more I'm leaning towards not getting that done, so long as, you know, the hormones that I have move the fat distribution in my face good enough, then I'm gonna be pretty happy. Did you have thoughts on how you decided on your pronouns? Were there any outside influences? I saw some people doing it and realized that just made sense. Also, I like to be accommodating to people, so using every single one works. How do you deal with people misgendering you on your channel? I can't get misgendered if I go by all pronouns. And that is all the major questions for this video. This video was long. Oh my gosh, my throat is killing me. But I hope these questions or answers, I hope these answers helped you in any way, even if it was just to better understand what this sort of experience is like or to better understand where I'm coming from. Please leave in the comments what your personal experience is like, or if you just, even if there's anything like I said that you just don't agree with, then tell me in the comments, because this is one of those situations where you just kind of have to get a lot of people's personal experience in order to really grasp your head around this concept. With all this being said, you know, don't forget to take into the fact that your brain isn't fully developed until you reach like 25. So if you don't resonate with what I've said in this video, probably are not transgender or non-binary. But more importantly, if you're still on the fence after watching this video, go see a therapist. You should just go see, I know that's not quite as easy for some people, depending on what state you live in or what country you live in. I'm very sorry for everyone who currently lives in Texas and Florida, but that's why we make these videos, because there's some people who just need a label for themselves to just wrap their head around it, because like naming it, giving it a name helps us understand it. And so if you're in a situation where you can't go to a therapist, if you can't talk to people about it, then these are what these videos are for. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay beautiful and keep playing.